welcome back to the Emily the Mystic YouTube channel. My name is Emily the Mystic, and I'm so excited as always that you are here for another very interesting topic and another very interesting video today. This video is really going to excite you if you are a spiritual seeker and love learning really fascinating, kind of crazy information about the spirit world. I was really inspired to talk about this topic because it's come up for me a few times recently in client sessions, and there isn't a lot of information out there about it, so I wanted to do some research and pull together a video for you so that we can dive into learning about walk-in souls today. So if you've never heard of the term walk-in soul before, welcome. You're going to be learning something very interesting here. And I hope you leave this video with some main takeaways about what walk-in souls are so that it can help you have a greater understanding of the evolution of the soul as well. Perhaps you've had an experience in your life where you know someone who is a walk-in soul, or you've come upon that in your own spiritual practice, or maybe you're a spiritual business owner and you've done readings and that has come up for you before. So I hope that this video will help demystify the topic of walk-in souls and give you some more clarity about what this is all about. So walk-in souls, what are they? What does that term refer to? So the term walk-in soul refers to the fact that a soul can be replaced or exchanged with a different soul, a different consciousness. So basically, let's say there's a human body, one soul leaves the body, the other new soul comes into the body. Yes, this is possible. Yes, this can happen. And today we're going to talk about why and what. What the heck? Why the heck does this happen? And what's really going on here? Evolutionarily, energetically, soul-wise, etc. So my interest in this topic was piqued because I recently did a reading for a very well-known podcast host. She's going to remain anonymous for the purpose of this video because I don't know if she wants this information to be private, to be public, excuse me. And because this was talked about during the course of the reading, we also talked about it a little bit in the podcast episode that we did together as well. But for the purpose of her privacy and for all of my clients' confidentiality, I'm not going to share who this was. But during this reading with this person, she explained to me and asked me about a story involving her brother. So my client's brother had an experience where when he was growing up, he remembers very vividly as a teenager looking at himself in the mirror and thinking to himself, that's not me, that's not my body. What is this body? Where am I? How did I get here? Literally, very clearly having that experience. And her brother claims that since that point, moving forward in his life, he did not fully understand who he was and how he got there. And also, my client witnessed in him that his personality started to change and shift from that point forward. And therefore, their relationship started to change and shift from that point forward. And my client had found this quite distressing, to be honest with you, because she had very clear childhood memories with her brother being this specific person, specific personality. And all of a sudden, in one moment, her brother is somebody else with a slightly different personality, different traits, and treated her differently. Not in a bad way, but in a way that was subtle enough that she was able to pick up on the fact that something within him had changed. And of course, skeptics can say, oh, well, he became a teenager and his personality changed and things within his life must have changed and shifted for him to start acting differently. And sure, that can be the case. But when there is a clear moment of recognition of, wait a second, this is my body? How did I get here? And being confused about that is very clearly the mark of a walk-in soul. Another situation that I had recently was I was doing a reading for another client, and we were doing a past life regression session together. And during the past life regression session, the guides took my client back in time to a past life where she had had a very tragic accident. And in that past lifetime, she remembers looking at her body and thinking to herself, this is not mine. This is not my body. Is this me? And from that point forward, her life literally began from that moment, from the moment of that accident, from the trauma that she had been through. And all of a sudden, she had to live with her body and her life after this tragic accident had occurred. So we're going to talk about that story a little bit more later on and why that was a walk-in soul experience and exactly what happened. But before we do that, let's talk about the what. Like, what is a walk-in soul and how does this happen in the first place? So a walk-in soul occurs when a person experiences a profound physical transformation or a spiritual transformation, such as a near-death experience of some kind, such as a traumatic medical issue or injury, a traumatic accident, where the person's life was completely and dramatically altered in some way. There is an element of a turning point. Some aspect or facet of the person's life has changed so completely dramatically. And very likely there was a loss of consciousness that was involved in that incident, such as a car accident and losing consciousness and going to the hospital and then waking up, in the body. Something along those lines. And so when that happens, when the person loses consciousness, it gives the opportunity for a new soul to come into the body. That's when the transference process happens. Now, here's the thing. With a walk-in soul, it's not possible for any old soul randomly in the universe, in the astral realm, to just walk into the body. These are not random souls. These are not souls that exist in some crazy place and they just decide to come here to planet Earth for some random reason. That's not the case at all. If there's a walk-in soul experience that happens, you as the walk-in soul and the previous soul of the body have to have a soul contract or agreement that was made prior to this incarnation that states that one soul is going to inhabit the body for the first half of the life and the new soul is going to inhabit the body for the second half of the life. There's a very clear and specific contract that is made and a plan within that soul's incarnation path that is made in order for the walk-in experience to happen. If we're talking about matters of entity attachment, that's a whole different story where low vibrational, low consciousness beings are attaching to a host, so a person, and are feeding off of their energy. That's a different story. That's not what we're talking about for this video. If you want more information about that topic, I have a video called I Had an Entity Attachment. That's a totally different story and not what we're talking about for this video. Souls that experience a walk-in are highly evolved, high consciousness souls. And the reason why there's a walk-in experience that's facilitated is because the old soul only wants to learn a series of lessons related to the beginning of the person's life. Perhaps the experience of being born on planet Earth, the experience of having those specific parents, the experience of learning how to walk, the experience of going to school, whatever the things are in childhood that happened. The new soul doesn't need that. They don't need the childhood stuff. They're good. They've done that before. They've done that in other lifetimes, but they want to come into the body to experience the second half of that person's life. So that could be later on in adulthood, and very likely, especially in the case of a traumatic accident or injury or near-death experience, they are coming into the body in order to experience life from that perspective after the event or accident has happened. And very likely the old soul that's leaving the body before the traumatic event or accident doesn't want to deal with life after the fact. Perhaps they've learned everything they need to. They're good. They don't need to be present in this lifetime anymore. They don't need to go through potentially the trauma of having to recover or heal or navigate being in the body after the traumatic accident has happened. But perhaps the more evolved soul who's walking in does need to have that experience. Perhaps that's really going to help their soul's overall evolution and growth. So the new soul is going to have a specific purpose or a mission that's going to align with walking into the body of the person who has been in this incident where a walk-in transfer is able to happen. And very likely, too, that the person who's going through that experience, they may very well need to be on a spiritual path. Perhaps the evolved soul needs to come in order to steer that person in a more spiritual direction, perhaps in order to really experience something, or perhaps to be visible and be seen by more people, or whatever the reason is, there is a specific reason, and it is for the highest good of all of the souls involved. And I really want to emphasize that because walk-ins, again, we need to differentiate them from entity attachment, possession, which is a form of entity attachment. Those are low vibrational, low consciousness beings that are attaching to the human host. A walk-in is a high vibrational, high consciousness soul that is walking into the body in order to experience something for its overall soul's evolution and growth. Now, by the way, this phenomena is extremely, extremely rare. It does not happen that often, especially when you think of the number of people on planet Earth at this time. There are not that many walk-in souls that are walking around here on this planet. So you do not need to have any fear about, well, oh my God, what if I go to sleep at night and there's another soul that takes over my body? No, that's not going to happen to you. Again, the purpose of this video is to help explain the topic and bring some clarity around it so you can understand it and understand it when you hear about it within the spiritual community. But again, it's not going to happen to you. So don't stress about it unless if it's somehow in your soul's grand plan for your incarnation. And you would have agreed to that at some point before this incarnation began. Maybe you are a walk-in soul watching this. Maybe you remember having a walk-in experience. And if that is you, I hope that this video brings you some positivity and some insight into what happened. Because if you are an evolved walk-in soul coming into a new body, it's going to feel pretty disorienting to have to learn the ways of the body and also to come into a body that has its own memories and experiences and muscle memory and to learn how to operate it from the halfway mark within that person's lifespan. And by the way, when a walk-in soul comes into a human body, it takes on its brain, obviously, which stores its subconscious memory, its subconscious mind, its belief systems. It retains all of the muscle memory and the trauma that's been stored within the body. But the walk-in soul brings its own wisdom, it brings its own soul experience, it brings its own personality to the table as well. So that's why a lot of people who have gone, that's potentially why I should say, people who've gone through a near-death experience have an experience with a strong personality shift or change. It could be because there's a different soul that's chosen to inhabit the body. And there's nothing bad about that or wrong about that. In fact, that person is still going to retain a lot of the qualities and the memories of the body that it's inhabiting, but it can also be very disorienting for both the family members of the walk-in soul as well as for the walk-in soul itself to kind of figure out what the heck is going on. And very likely the walk-in soul is not going to remember or be conscious of the fact that they are a walk-in soul in the first place. They're not going to know. They're just going to have that moment where they wake up and they're like, whoa, this happened to me and I have all of these memories from my childhood, but I don't know how I got here. That's sort of the vibe. I don't know how I got here to this point in time. And they will, if it's part of their soul's incarnation plan, they may wake up to the fact that they are a walk-in soul at some point in their spiritual awakening journey. Maybe they have a reading with an Akashic Records reader like myself or somebody else, and they learn about this phenomena. Or maybe you watching this video, you're like, oh my God, that's me. I had a very life-changing thing happened to me, and I don't remember much before that other than some things from childhood. Very possible that you could be a walk-in soul. Now, for those of you who have had childhood trauma or you don't have a lot of memories from your childhood, that's not what I'm referring to in this video. Again, this is a very clear indication of when there would have been an opportunity for one soul to leave the body and for the other to come in, again, in the case of a tragic event or accident or near-death experience. Another example, another anecdote to give you, my Akashic Records teacher often gives the story during her group programs and group containers that one time she was teaching the Akashic Records in person, and one of the students in the Akashic Records class lost consciousness, and a soul walked into the body of the person who had lost consciousness in order to deliver a message to the Akashic Records group. That is also a possibility. However, that's more of a trance channeling experience, less of a walk-in soul experience, because that soul left as soon as the message had been shared. But that's also another possibility, that a walk-in soul could come in for a short period of time to share a message, to share a lesson, to teach people something, and then move on. Again, that's more of a trance channeling experience where the consciousness and the soul of the person in the body was likely moved aside for the moment of the new soul to come in to share an experience before it left and before the person returned to their normal state of being. But that could be considered another type of walk-in soul experience, more of a temporary one. And again, very rare. That has happened to her maybe once or twice in her 20 some years of doing this work. So again, do not fear that it's not going to happen to you. And that there was a positive reason for that being who walked in needed to share a message of some kind. And it was a high vibrational soul, high vibrational being. And connecting this back to the story of my client who I did the past life regression for, the reason why we did the regression in the first place was to help her understand why she had felt so misunderstood in her life up until this point, and why she was really feeling triggered by her family members having pity for her for some situations that were going on in her life. So when we were shown this very clear moment in time where her soul had walked into the body of somebody who had been through a tragic accident, she began to realize, oh my gosh, if I had inhabited the body of somebody who had been through a tragic accident, I knew that my soul had to learn those lessons associated with the body that had been through the trauma. And it was very disorienting for me because I had to learn how to live in the body that had been through all of that trauma and how to relate to my caretakers and caregivers and family members and people in my life. And she was feeling triggered by people pitying her in this lifetime because of how her caregivers had treated her in that lifetime. Almost as if she was not the same person or a different person, which she was energetically. She had a new soul in her body. And my client's soul had a sort of traumatic experience because of that, which brought her a need to heal in this lifetime. And by the way, all of this is leading to my client's her soul's overall evolution and growth in order for her to experience as much as she possibly can within her soul's reincarnation history for its own ascension path. So potentially the walk-in situation may have been challenging, may have been traumatic, but overall, her soul experienced and learned the lessons that it needed to from coming into a body who had been that had been through such a traumatic accident and incident. So again, walk-in souls happen for a reason, because there is something needed for the soul's overall evolution and growth. They do not happen randomly in the middle of the night, and that is a completely different experience. Now, this calls into question, and a topic that I just want to address really briefly to give a spiritual perspective on multiple personalities, as well as dissociative personality disorder, which is where the person has one other clear personality, and the sort of the spiritual take on that. With walk-in soul experiences, there are not going to be two clear souls within the body of the person in question. Very likely somebody who is going through DID, dissociative identity disorder, or multiple personality disorder has likely been through extreme childhood trauma that has caused their consciousness to fracture in some way. And in order to develop a coping mechanism, it's created a separate personality to deal with life. Very likely that can happen. Not a different soul. It's just a different facet of that person's personality that has been fabricated in order to deal with whatever they've been through in life. Also very likely that it could be an entity attachment of some kind, where the entity has the ability to speak through the person's body. Again, very rare, very, very rare that can happen. However, that is definitely a possibility. Low vibrational entities and consciousness they're not going to help the person. So very likely, if that is the case with somebody who has a personality disorder of the types that I've mentioned, it's very likely that that personality represented by the entity is going to be negative in some way, and it's going to negatively have a major impact on the person's life who is dealing with this disorder. So, with the case of the walk-in soul, they're going to have one clear personality, and there's going to be a very clear instance or situation in which their consciousness switched at some point in time. So I hope that sort of answers that question for you as well. Finally, the last thing that I want to share is something that I consider to be a very simple form of the walk-in soul experience. However, this happens when you are going through a massive spiritual awakening journey. It is also possible to allow in higher consciousness aspects of your own soul into your body to help you with your soul's overall evolution and growth. Now, this last phenomena that I'm referring to is what happens when your soul, your unique individual soul, decides that it needs higher levels and aspects of its own consciousness to be expressed in the human body in order to fulfill its mission and purpose in this lifetime. It's not a different soul. The walk-in experience, traditionally, classically, is a completely different soul. With this last phenomena that I'm referring to, I don't really have a name for it. It's sort of like a higher consciousness walk-in. We'll call it that, a higher consciousness walk-in. Will happen when your soul and your body need to have higher aspects of yourself come in for some purpose or reason. So how can that happen? What is that exactly? Most of you have probably been through this form of higher consciousness expansion before. If you can remember a specific moment in time where before your spiritual awakening, you were very asleep, you remember getting up to go to your job and then living for the weekends, and that was your life, paying your bills, going to work, etc. That's all you remember. you are not awake and aware of your spirituality, spiritual nature. For a lot of us, we can remember that part of our life, and it almost feels like a different version of us, doesn't it? Feels like a different, and we had the same personality, but different level of consciousness. So I personally believe it's possible to allow in higher aspects of our own consciousness in order to help us move forward on our journey and on our path. I would not be able to do this work that I'm doing today without help from higher aspects of my own soul and my own consciousness. And so for you, having gone through a spiritual awakening journey, it's very likely that there are higher aspects of yourself and your own soul that have become just a natural part of you and a part of who you are. So that's another thing that I want you to think about when it comes to the walk-in soul topic of conversation is perhaps you've allowed in higher aspects of your own soul and consciousness to help you on your journey as well. And again, that's nothing to be feared or worried about, but just another piece of this conversation that can help you understand how you've become the person that you are now. It's from higher aspects of who you are that have been brought down into your body and into your awareness. So isn't that interesting? I think that's a very interesting topic to leave us with. So I hope that you found this video valuable and interesting. If you have any knowledge of your own about walk-in souls, experience with them, we would love to hear. Comment below, please. I'm super interested to find out. I am by no means an expert on this topic, but it's a very interesting one, and I think it's fascinating. So I'm trying to learn about it as much as I can. So if you like this video, content like this, make sure you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel for more videos just like this one, and I cannot wait to see you all for next week's video. So enjoy your day, and I'll see you soon.